Okay. I should be wearing this thing all the time. Uh, just painted this. I'm gonna let it dry and do a background. And yeah, it feels like everything is just first time, like first try. I just played. There's a piano over here. Played a few chords. You Are My Sunshine. C, 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 F, G, C. Just practicing. Gotta paint by numbers too, but I found it a little tedious. Like, it's gonna be a really slow process. With all the numbers on there, it's like making a puzzle and painting at the same time. But the real reason I'm here is I want to read this book. And show you my markings and have discussion and kind of my intuition and things that are my impressions and or heard it said downloads. The first time I read this was on Dr. Seuss' birthday, and that's when I started it. And it really, like, I was told to read this book many times before I actually did. But once I did, I felt like coming out of a dream. Like, I just saw things differently. And since then, I've wanted to read it on camera. And kind of show how I felt about it and just my impressions, I guess. In the spring of 1992, I was around Easter, as I recall. An extraordinary phenomenon occurred in my life. God began talking with you through me. Let me explain. I was very unhappy during that period personally, professionally, and emotionally, and my life was feeling like a failure on all levels. As I'd been in the habit for years of writing my thoughts down in letters, which I usually never delivered, I picked up my trusty yellow legal pad and began pouring out my feelings. This time, rather than another letter to another person I imagined to be victimizing me, I thought I'd go straight to the source, straight to the greatest victimizer of them all. I decided to write a letter to God. Yeah, right there. I'm like, yeah, I've actually done that before, and it's really very profound. So I'm relating to this story on page 1. It was spiteful, passionate letter full of confusion, contortions, and condemnations. I like those 3 C's. And a pile of angry questions. Why wasn't my life working? What would it take to get it to work? Why would I not find happiness in relationships? Was the experience of adequate money going to elude me forever? Finally, the most empathetically, what had I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? There's another C. That continuing struggle. To my surprise, as I scribbled out the last of my bitter, unanswerable questions and prepared to toss my pen aside, my hand remained poised over the paper as if held there by some invisible force. Abruptly, the pen began moving on its own. I've called this automatic writing. This is a great experience. I've had quite a bit of practice actually with this. Abruptly, the pen began moving on its own. I had no idea what I was about to write, but an idea seemed to be coming, so I decided to flow with it. Out came. Do you really want an answer to all these questions, or are you just venting? Chapter 1, page 1. Conversations with God, Book 1. I blinked, and then my mind came up with a reply. I wrote that down too. Both. I'm venting, sure, but if these questions have answers, I'd sure as hell like to hear them. You are sure as hell about a lot of things, but wouldn't it be nice to be sure as heaven? And I wrote, what is that supposed to mean? Before I knew it, I had begun a conversation, and I was not writing so much as taking dictation. That dictation went on for 3 years. And at the time, I had no idea where I was going. The answers to the questions I was putting on paper never came to me until the question was completely written and I'd put my own thoughts away. After the answers came faster than I could write, and I found myself scribbling to keep up. When I became confused or lost the feeling that the words were coming from somewhere else, I put the pen down and walked away from the dialogue until I could again felt inspired. Sorry, that's the word which truly fits. To return to the yellow legal pad and start transcribing again. These conversations are still going on as I write this, and much of it is found on pages which follow, pages which contain an astounding dialogue, which at first I believed, then assumed to be of personal value, but which I now understand was meant for more than just me. It was meant for you and everyone else who has come to this material. For my questions are your questions. I want you to get into this dialogue as soon as you can, because what's really important here is not my story, but yours. It is your life which brought you here. It is your personal experience to which this material has relevance. Otherwise, you would not be here with it right now. So let's enter the dialogue with the question I had been asking for a very long time. How does God talk, and to whom? When I asked this question, here's the answer I received. I talk to everyone, all the time. The question is not to whom do I talk, but who listens. Intrigued, I asked God to explain on this subject. Here's what God said. First, let's exchange the word talk with the word communicate. It's a much better word, a much fuller, more accurate one. When we try to speak to each other, me to you, you to me, we are immediately constricted by the unbelievable unbelievable limitation of words. For this reason, I do not communicate by words alone. In fact, rarely do I do so. My most common form of communication is through feeling. Feeling is the language of the soul. If you want to know what's true for you about something, look to how you're feeling about it. Feelings are sometimes difficult to discover, and often even more difficult to acknowledge, yet hidden in your deepest feelings is the highest truth. The trick to get to those feelings, I will show you how again if you wish. I told God that I did wish, but that right now I wished even more for a complete and full answer to my question. Here's what God said. I also communicate with thought. Thought and feelings are not the same, although they can occur at the same time. In communicating with thought, I often use images and pictures. For this reason, thoughts are more effective than mere words as tools of communication. In addition to feelings and thoughts, I also use vehicle of experience as a grand communicator. And finally, when feelings and thoughts and experiences all fail, I use words. Words are really the least effective communicator. These are the most open to misinterpretation, most often misunderstood. I'm trying to show you the markings I made the first time I read it. I'm maybe making more marks as we go through. This is feeling pretty emotional to me. We're on page 2 and 3. And it's like something I would have written. And it's funny reading, like, the words are the most open to misinterpretation, and yet this is what we have right here is words. Nothing more. But as you read it, that's when God inspires those pictures and videos and experiences in your mind, and they play through like a film, just flashing. The grand communicator is experience. Yeah, sometimes there's numbers. I've been into numerology, and there's lots of different types of languages. Pictures, numbers, videos, experience. You just remember a movie or YouTube that you watched, and it just flashes and everything is like happening at once. Okay, page 4. And why is that? It is because of what words are. Words are merely utterances, noises that stand for feelings, thoughts, and experience. They are symbols, signs, initials. They are not truth. They are not the real thing. Words may help you understand something. Experience allows you to know. Yet there are some things you cannot experience. So I have given you the tools of knowing, and these are called feelings, and so too thoughts. Now, the supreme irony here is that you have all placed so much importance on the Word of God and so little on the experience. In fact, you place so little value on experience that when what you experience of God differs from what you have heard of God, you automatically discard the experience and own the words, when it should be just the other way around. I'll put that paragraph in brackets. Let's read it again so it stands out a little more. In fact, you place so little value on experience that when what you experience of God differs from what you've heard of God, you automatically discard the experience and your own words, when it should be just the other way around. You place so little value on experience that when your experience of God differs from what you've heard of God, from what you experience of God differs from what you've heard of God, you automatically discard the experience and own the words. Yeah, this needs some markers. There's no color. I've mostly just started with pen. I didn't have these pens at the time. Now I have these pens. And I want to be intentional about the colors I use here. When what you experience of God differs from what you've heard of God, what you experience of God, what you've heard of God.